Hello, and welcome to the Come to Your Senses podcast. I'm your host, embodiment-based coach, Mary Lofgren. Here, we explore how to live bravely and beautifully through a lifestyle of embodiment. You'll hear gems to empower you around mindset, mindfulness, somatic psychology, and neuroscience, as well as beauty, food, style, and the art of slow living to meet your soul through the senses. I am so happy that you're here. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Come to Your Senses. It is a beautiful spring day here where I live in Asheville, North Carolina. And spring often brings with it a new energy and a new awareness and often new desires of how you want to show up in your life, what you want to give your time to, what you want to not give more of your time to. And for myself, recently, I somehow found the willingness deep within the canyon of my soul to delete Instagram and email off of my phone. And the results have been amazing. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them threaded throughout the episode today. But the reason I share that is because our episode today is centered around one of the most popular topics here on the podcast, which is the seduction of self. And so in the pursuit of desire, there are many different approaches, all of which contain potent magic and have their own kind of genius. However, in a over-masculinized, over-capitalized culture, there tends to be this beefy, marbled muscle of effort, without any actual relationship with what it is that you want to create and what wants to be created through you. And springtime is a wonderful time for spring cleaning your home, but also for spring cleaning your habits. You know, as we arise from winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, the nurturance in the environment helps to bring to the surface a greater sense of feeling resourced. And so this can be a really wonderful time to create a shift in your life and seduce yourself into some new habits. The word habit comes from the Latin habere, which essentially means to consist of. And I love that etymology so much. I just love etymology in general. But the reason I love that so much is because really, when you think about what we consist of, what our lives consist of, our minds, our bodies, our emotions, so much, if not all, is based on habitual ways of being. And the great news is that habits can always be re-examined and shifted and changed in service to making more of your life force available to you. So a lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you in today's episode is actually from my experience in recovery from addiction. I've spoken before on this podcast about how I have participated in addiction recovery from all different types of things, both substance as well as process addictions. So processes or ways of being that take on the resemblance of a compulsion in relationships and in my relationship to money and how I spend and how I save. And so I've done a lot of deep work around these habitual ways of being that at one time saved my life. And then when that time was over, were really trying to take my life, or not trying to take my life. Compulsive coping mechanisms and maladaptive coping mechanisms aren't evil in their nature, but they can be life-threatening, not just even in a physical way, as in death, but life-threatening in the way that we offer our precious, divine, true essence and life force to something that cannibalizes it. Didn't know you were going to get this existential of a lesson when you clicked on a seduction podcast, did you? But seduction, so for those of you who might be new to my work, I wrote a book called Sacred Seduction that was all about reimagining seduction instead of a tool of manipulation as a way of relating to life and to the divine, where you are literally seduced by your own becoming, and where your system of attraction operates from a core of authenticity. And when it comes to seduction, it is as much about what you let go of as it is about what you draw and call in. And so today's topic is actually going to be a 2-part series, where today we talk about the process of letting go of what isn't serving you, which clears the space for a truer experience of seduction to happen. And then next week, in the next episode, we'll be talking about how to practice sacred seduction. And rather than forcefully yelling at yourself or shaming yourself, which are the more typical ways of going about changing or adopting a new habit, instead using these energies of magnetism and attraction to seduce yourself into a new way of being and see the entire landscape of what that way of being is really seducing you into. So, for example, for me, wanting to spend less time on my phone, the physiological benefits of not looking at a screen were like the lint on the sweater of what I really wanted. What I really wanted was the part of my brain that was taken up for 4 hours a day scrolling, sometimes more, not scrolling the whole time, but using this device and using this screen. It's like I wanted that part of my energy back. And I also knew that in order to get it back, I was going to have to go through some discomfort. And so that's where we're going to begin today, is with the art of letting go in order to create space for the art of seducing in. So let's dive into our gems. And so where we're going to begin today is where we often begin when it comes to coming to our senses. And that is to invite the body into this process. And so I'll invite you for the purpose of today to choose a habit that you'd like to start or shift or stop. Doesn't have to be the perfect one, doesn't even have to be the right one, but just something that you can bring into this practice lab, knowing that whatever is revealed and uncovered by practicing with this one habit is something that will extend its hands into all of your other habits. So beginning by just searching through your body, your mind, as you look out at your life, what is calling to be worked with right now? And then I'll invite you to start to bring on board the sacred witness. So wherever you're seated or standing, if you just take a moment to let your body drop a little deeper into the support that's there, whether it's the floor or the chair you're seated in, starting to bring on board that part that can watch and notice without needing to fix or analyze or criticize, that can just be with what's here without putting any conditions on it, where everything that your body reveals in this space is really welcome here because it all contains useful wisdom and information. And through the eyes of that sacred witness, I invite you to just turn your attention towards this habit that you want to shift. And just noticing what comes up in your thoughts, what comes up in your emotions. How does your body respond? What sensations, what centers of your body maybe activate or go numb in response to this orientation? And if you like, you can pause the podcast here to explore this a little bit, maybe bring some breath to your body, bring a little bit of movement to where your body might be speaking, write down some of the thoughts that you notice, just to collect as much information as you need, because I would imagine that with most habits, by very definition, a habit is something that has become automatic. And so that means that whether it's something you want to stop doing or start doing, the decision around it happens faster than your conscious mind can grab hold of it. And so by doing this work of the sacred witness and taking that prism of the habit or of this aspect of your life and yourself and holding it up to the light to look at it at different angles without making it right or wrong, sometimes that in itself is a way of interrupting that automatic pathway that has never been questioned, that is just habitual. So this is a really, really powerful part of this practice and this inquiry. And I encourage you to go there with it. Don't skip this part. And then once you have, once again, a little bit more information and a little bit more perspective, a question to drop in is, how is this serving me? So what I find is the secret to shifting a habit is that as long as that thing is serving you, it is not going anywhere. You will keep it around. And why wouldn't you? And so what your mind might tell you is, there's no way this is serving me to do this habit or to not do this new habit. And if that shows up, great. Door number 1, passed through, no problem. And then I encourage you to just stay there for a moment. And once again, widen the lens of that witness to see, for example, for me, scrolling my phone at night was affecting my sleep, was affecting my ability to feel serenity in my day-to-day, was just draining time away from my ability to show up in my work. But it was also really serving me in those lonesome moments at night before bed when I just didn't want to have to face going to bed by myself, or when I didn't want to have to face a long night of watching TV, try on a night where I didn't have social plans, having to make my alone time not so alone, if you know what I mean. And so even though it wasn't necessarily serving me in a holistic sense, it served a purpose. And being able to notice that and see that really helped me look at myself in those moments through a compassionate lens. And then that leads us to the next question, which is, what is it costing me to continue to participate? So again, you're getting something, you're undeniably getting something, even from a habit that you feel like is slowly killing you from the inside out, like I felt about my phone. And what I noticed when I just did an inventory of my life is that, yeah, it definitely served a purpose, like a deflated life preserver or a life preserver with some holes in it serves a purpose when one is lost at sea. But what it was costing me is everything that I just shared about the quality of my relationships, the quality of my relationship to myself. And what I really wanted to know in breaking this pattern and this habit was, what is really hiding under this rock? You know, I tell myself, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. I'm dependent on my phone. I pick it up a million times a day, and that is one story in the prism of my mind. But a deeper story is I will survive, and I may need a phone. That's true. That's true. But I don't need these apps on my phone. It's not imperative that I have access to email and social media 24 hours a day. And in fact, it's really costing me a lot. And so what is it that's really hiding out in those 2 to 4 to 6 hours that I spend on my phone? And there might be a part of you, like there's a part of me that knows that anytime I'm trapped in a loop of compulsion, it's pretty much always because there's something there that I don't want to feel, such as lonesomeness, an emotion, or a truth that my inner critic tells me is true, and that I'm so afraid to find out if they're right. And one of my mentors, Jenna Ward from the School of Embodied Arts, talks about embodiment as this process of exploring the layers of emotional expression in our body, and where we meet those edges of discomfort when it comes to our emotions and our psyche, because usually what is beyond that edge of emotional discomfort is deep pleasure. And even beyond pleasure, as in feeling good, what I experience is the pleasure of feeling whole. And that's why often in embodiment coaching, clients will notice that, one of my clients used the phrase, everything has changed, and yet I'm not changing anything. The work that she was doing on the inner to arrive at that wholeness and that pleasure was enough to change the orbit and the axis of her life, her habits, the way she moved about the world, and the way the world interfaced with her. And so, coaching is one of the ways that we can explore those emotional edges with safety and skill, and through the lens of that sacred witness, and take that information, and instead of using it to fortify critical inner beliefs, to actually free up and loosen trapped life force, which then leads to new beliefs and a truer sense of self and more agency and energy and choice in how you move about your life. And so if embodiment coaching is something that interests you or that you'd like to learn more about, head to schoolofsensualliving.com/coaching, and I would be delighted to talk to you a little bit more about it. And that brings us to our next gem, which is that whenever you remove something that's keeping that emotional edge at bay from your life, there will be a withdrawal. And the thing that if you take nothing else from this episode, what I hope you take away is that withdrawal is rough, but it does have an end. So withdrawal, we're all familiar with withdrawal as it pertains to drug addiction or alcohol addiction. But there is also a withdrawal when you cut up your credit cards, or a withdrawal when you turn off your phone at night and decide to be with yourself instead of being with the internet. And some of the symptoms of withdrawal that you might experience are irritability, feelings of hopelessness, restlessness, interrupted sleep. These are just, I'm speaking from my own experience of what I experienced on a micro level when I stopped or when I deleted those apps off of my phone. I was like, God, why am I so, just nothing satisfies me. And, it was like a mystery to me. And then I was like, oh, I'm in withdrawal from these things. And that was such a relief because I know that withdrawal has this period that eventually comes to an end when I trust the process and don't return. Returning, which is not good or bad, it's just part of the human experience. Returning to the habit kind of puts you back at square one when it comes to that process of withdrawal. But gaining some time, like for me, it's been a couple of weeks away from my phone. And so that period of, oh my God, I'm going to die, I can't live without this thing, is over. And I'm going to tell you more about that in the next episode, about what we can expect on the other side of this edge. But what I will say is that there's a reason that in addiction recovery, whether that's 12-step programs or treatment centers or groups, group therapy, whatever it is, harm reduction, that there is almost always this component of community. Because compulsivity around anything is a way of stopping up the pain of separateness and feeling alone and feeling like it's too much and feeling like no one is ever going to understand. I'm so messed up. This is too hard. So I just need a hit. And whether that hit is drugs or Snapchat. Does Snapchat still exist? I don't know. TikTok, whatever it is. Hope my episode doesn't get shadow banned for using those words. There's a lot of controversy around TikTok right now. Thankfully, I've never been seduced into the TikTok trance. This would probably be a whole different episode if I had been, but whatever it is, that feeling of aloneness and trying to change the tracks of a neural pathway of coping, there's a reason that traditionally that is done in partnership with other people. And we're going to talk about that more in the following episode as well. But for now, I'll just say that connection is the balm that makes change tolerable. I remember when I got divorced and was first separated from my husband, it was such a bone-rattling lonesomeness, the experience of living alone really for the first time in my adult life. And that was when I got my dog Winnie. That Winnie was not enough to stop the runaway train of unhealthy coping mechanisms that I turned to at that time. But gosh, I don't know what I would have done without her at that time. I got her when she was a puppy. She was 3 months old. I went in to get a cat because I thought a cat would be more manageable as a pet in the city. And I just fell in love with Lorena, which was her shelter name. And I brought her home and she was 5 pounds and we would just nap under the box air conditioner and binge watch Nashville during that time. And I don't know what I would have done without having the connection of that little creature under my wing during that difficult and painful time. And the last thing I want to say is that as I speak today, I'm aware that some of you may be listening to this and in active addiction or struggling with perhaps not wanting to face or identify with addiction. And if that's true, I am with you. I am cheering you on. And this episode is really more designed to help you shift everyday habits using some of the wisdom of recovery, but is not intended to replace a process of recovery, which is a much deeper, more structural, bare bones kind of thing. And so I urge you, if addiction is something that you're currently facing, to contact the various resources that there are out there to get help. And also that everything that I've shared today is my own experience, and I encourage you to hold it up to the light of your own life to see if it resonates as truth in your own body. And once again, this episode is part 1 in a 2-part series. So now that we have examined how to create more space, we're going to talk about, after the death of an old way of being, the life that springs forward. We're going to talk about how seduction is based in desire, and that desires have their own timing and their own way of leading. And we're also going to talk about some ways to bring the satisfaction of changing a habit into your life in a different way, so that you're not moving from that inner critic who tells you to be better, but you're instead moving from that inner companion that guides you towards loving and believing in yourself in both word and deed. So thank you, as always, for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so honored if you would subscribe to the podcast, like the podcast, and gold star level review the podcast. It's one of my goals to have our podcast come to 100 reviews by the end of the year. And I would be so delighted to read your name on the air if you would be so kind as to share what you love about the podcast in a review. If you need help in discovering how to leave a review, you can view a 1-minute video on how to do that at schoolofsensualliving.com/review. And thank you so much for listening today. We will see you in the next episode. For coaching, classes, and community in creating a lifestyle of embodiment, head to schoolofsensualliving.com. There you'll find a free video series on how to reduce anxiety and intercept the stress response through powerful, confident body language. Head to schoolofsensualliving.com/confidence to watch your first video